Action. Oh. Did that just work when you said action?
That is freaky.
Stop recording. No. Okay. Impressive.
So it's actually,
yeah,
like, it's recording.
It's going.
Okay. All right, let's go. All right, everyone. So this is a very different episode of Thinkers and Doers, a special one, no doubt. I've got Pete with us. Pete, my man, hello. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
And, it's the first episode, actually, that we're kind of doing outside. And for good reason, so you can kind of enjoy a little bit of the sea as much as we can from here, kind of thing. So, Pete, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And Pete, tell us a little bit, what have you been up to these days? Tell us a little bit about what you're up to and like your trajectory, just so that people can get to know you a little bit.
So I always struggle to explain like what I do. There's different things I can say, and then a lot of people just don't understand. So sometimes, to be a bit provocative, I might say I'm a blogger, and then people think, I take pictures of my breakfast and post it online. Then sometimes I say I'm a writer, but then people think I'm like a novelist or Shakespeare or something. That's just not true either. So I kind of run online businesses related to creating content, primarily targeting search traffic. So people are searching for things on Google, and then hopefully they're landing on my website to find the answers to their problems, or they're looking for something in particular.
That's really cool. And how did you get to that point? Like, what was the process to actually come to that?
Well, so I started off originally I studied linguistics and language at university, and then after that I didn't have a clue what job I wanted to do. I kind of liked the idea of marketing, and then I kind of saw this job. I think I was reading a newspaper one day and I just saw a job advert for a copywriter, and I was like, oh, that sounds like something I might actually be able to do, kind of explaining things in a written format, and then optimizing it so, for a business they can speak to their customers clearly. So I kind of started looking at jobs related to that, and then after a while I got offered a job as like a junior copywriter in an agency. So I did that for a year, and then what happens is when you're working at a digital marketing agency is that you're writing about everything you can imagine.
Good experience. I
learned so much in the first 3 months. I've never learned so much in such a short period. But it's very intense work. And after a while you kind of start seeing all these small businesses, and I kind of thought, oh, it's cool to work on help those businesses, but I'd love to create something on my own. And then, so during that time working in this agency for the first year, I started a cycling website. And the plan was to help people find stylish clothes they can cycle in. So it's about people cycling to work mostly. And trying to promote the positive side of cycling rather than there's a lot of fear content, bike crashes and stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to put a positive spin on it a bit more. So I kind of, from there I started this cycling website, and then that's how I kind of started creating content related to that. And then 10 years later, that's still what I'm doing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that experience, right, working for those companies as a copywriter, that definitely paid off, right, as an experience. I mean, one of the things that I would imagine that you have, that you learned back then, was to kind of learn how to write, especially for a digital context, right, because it's different. Tell us a little bit about that, about what kind of writing tips, writing for the internet, writing for maybe, digital marketing context.
So when people are reading content online, it's completely different to the way they'd engage with a book. So with a book, you're reading every line, you're reading every word. You might skim it a bit, but you're reading everything. The way people read online is they read maybe the first line, and then they kind of skim, maybe read a few more words, and then they're mostly looking for headings. So if you write a blog post, it's so rare someone will read every word. You've kind of got to accept that. So you've got to make sure you're keeping your writing style really simple. So you want one of the key rules is like a copywriter is each sentence is leading the person on to the next sentence.
Right.
So you don't want to lose them by going off on a tangent. You want to kind of keep the flow, and that's why you want to use short sentences, really short paragraphs as well. Because if people see a block of text like this, they're just not going to read it. So you want to keep very short sentences. Use quite simple language. You don't want to keep the reading style just really, really easy and make it as easy as possible for the reader.
Now, if you're a writer and you actually love writing and you love literature and you love words, would that have potentially a negative impact on your writing, or not really, because you just learn how to separate, sort of act based on the context?
Yeah, it's basically a new style of writing. So you can still, you might think it's kind of dumbing it down, but it's not. It's just a new way of presenting information. So you've got to accept what the reader wants, and then you've got to try and provide a service to them. So you can, sometimes I get writers on my website and they're really articulate, using lots of long words. It's all very impressive, but it's not a good experience for the user. So I think if you keep the user in mind, then you need to put your own ego aside a little bit sometimes and go, okay, look, how can I serve this person best?
I need to use that advice as well myself, so that's a very good one. Now, jumping a few years later, and you've got your cycling website, and in fact, when we met, you were sort of developing that, a lot, and I was very impressed because your business somehow, even though it's very much content based and internet based, there seems to be a sense of community as well, precisely because of what it is about, which is cycling. Cycling in and of itself is a good thing for the world, right?
Yeah.
So you're like serving a good cause. Is that how you see it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is the one thing I really love about this website, and this is partly why I did it, or partly the reason, maybe not why I started it, but it's why I've continued with it. I've kind of grown with it. When I started, I was kind of looking at a problem in that I didn't understand, in the UK especially, why to cycle to work people had this kind of like lycra look. They look like they were going off to a race, not to work. So, and I kind of wanted to bridge the gap. So like if you go to the Netherlands or Denmark or Germany even, people are dressed in normal clothes and cycling to work, and it's people on bikes. It's not like a hardcore cyclist. So I was trying to address that kind of issue, really. Sorry, I can't remember what your question was then.
No, exactly. That you're serving a good cause, because cycling is a good thing for the world. So it's a conscious business, in a sense. You're like, that you're promoting something good and not just, it's not, I don't know, a tobacco company or whatever. It's
definitely, it's something that kind of gives you extra motivation when you're working. And I think, and it's also something that makes you feel good when you're speaking about it. You're not kind of ashamed to say what you do. And I found that much, because I still did freelance work for most of the time I've done this site. And if people said what I did, when going back to what I was talking about before, I'd say, I'm a writer, but I'm kind of a copywriter for businesses. And it's, I was never proud of it. I was like, it's just something I did to kind of, pay the bills. And then the Descending Cyclist was always my passion project, what I really wanted to do. That was always kind of where I was trying to get to full time.
And this is because you were a cyclist yourself, right? And
so actually, no, when I first started the website, I mean, I cycled as a kid and stuff, obviously, but after I left uni, I then bought a car like most people do. And then I was driving to work and I hated it. I just hated getting stuck in traffic every day. It's this little metal box you get transported in, and then you go back in the little metal box and you're in an office all day, and it's just not a nice experience, really, especially when it's winter in the UK and it's dark and you go in, you sit in an office all day and then it's dark when you come out. I think it's just not how humans are meant to be, really.
Good point, yeah.
And so how I started this website was I was talking to my friend who was like the office cyclist, and he went in every day, full kit. He'd travel like an hour every day. It was crazy. And I kind of said to him, like, why do you have to wear all this gear? Is it not possible to just kind of go in normal clothes? Or maybe there's a middle ground of slightly performance clothes, but they look like normal clothes, so you don't need to have a shower when you get to the office and stuff like that. And that's basically the genesis of the idea. That was the kind of point where, okay, this is an interesting thing, and we started together this website, trying to address this middle ground that didn't seem to exist in the UK at that point, although it does seem to have changed quite a bit now.
That's so, I mean, I love that because, well, first of all, as I said before, you're mixing business and sustainability. For me, that's always a good thing in my book, because we know what the world is like at the moment, and we need sustainable and meaningful projects that are here for a long time, but at the same time, everyone needs to make a living. So you're kind of like bringing the two together in a lovely way, really. And then what you're telling me as well, which I also like, is you can be stylish while you're at it, right? So why is style important for you?
I think, or for going back to this guy who I started it with originally, he was like the most dapper guy you've ever met. He was in like lovely suits and stuff. He always looked really, really good, and he just had an eye for style. And the only time he didn't was when he was cycling to work, and that was kind of what really triggered this idea. I was like, what happens to you in this hour or two every day, where style just goes completely out the window?
Right.
And then we both talked about it quite a while, and we just got really interested in this idea. And I think the perception of cyclists, again in the UK, is like so bad, but I think it is partly because of they're in these weird little outfits, you know, and it just doesn't. And then people start treating them a bit differently. There are kind of these outsiders, or these weird cyclists and their stupid little bikes and stuff. Whereas I think if you start addressing it, and it's not about being uber stylish, but looking kind of everyday, good, normal clothes. It's a person on a bicycle. It's not a cyclist, one of these weird extremists. So I think the idea is that basically it's about people on bikes rather than
Wow.
that. You know.
And now you're not living in the UK anymore, right?
Nope. Sunny.
So well, today's not the best day for that, but still. But yeah, there is a difference. And tell us a little bit about your life abroad. Like you've been here in the south of Spain, right? Andalusia. What's it like for you? How long have you been here? And you know, what differences do you see in terms of like cycling, which are many, right? In terms of cycling habits and.
Yeah. So I originally left the UK not long after I started the website. Actually, I moved initially to Gibraltar. I got offered a job there. So that was my first time like living abroad, and I lived there for a couple of years. And then I quit that job after 2 years. And I was like, okay, I've had enough in this kind of corporate environment. Like, now is the time I'm going to really get serious on this website. So I moved to Germany, and then I was traveling around like a lot for a few more years. And then my partner got offered a job here in Spain. And because I wasn't full time on the website at that point, I was still doing a lot of freelance work, but at least it gave me the freedom to be where I wanted.
Right.
So it's not clocking in and out the office.
Digital nomad. Right?
Just kind of a digital nomad, yeah, like a SLOWMAD. Like, so I'm not traveling every week, but staying in places for a few months and maybe a year. And then we kind of came back here. And that's the great thing with this kind of work is you can just go. Like, there's nothing really holding you back. Like, if tomorrow we want to move to another country, it's no problem. I don't have to look for a new job. I've got my laptop in my bag here with me right now, and you can just go wherever you want, really.
So you don't necessarily miss home.
I mean, you miss aspects of the UK, but I think when you're there visiting for a few weeks, you kind of get what you're looking for, like visiting friends and family, and hanging out in the pub or whatever you want to do. Like. Yeah. You get enough of that, and then when you come back, I'm happy to come back. It's not like, I think some people when they go on holiday, they don't want to go back home, and that's not a great sign, I'd say. Whereas I feel good when I'm going back. And if I don't feel good, then I can stay longer if I want to, or I can come back a couple of weeks later. So
you've got that kind of freedom.
Exactly. It's the freedom and the flexibility that I love about it.
You know, the story you've just described, I think it's fair to say that it's the story of like millions of people, like in this time, in this period in history that we're living, right? It's kind of the zeitgeist of our time, is people becoming sort of freer and more independent. Even those who have sort of like permanent jobs, now they have, in many companies, a hybrid model, right? Where they're kind of working from home. So even some of those people are also like now considering moving abroad or that kind of thing. I know it's not all lovely and easy, so tell us a little bit about those challenges. You know, the challenges that you have you've had to deal with, sort of as your business progressed.
Yeah. So, the thing is, I say I've had this website for 10 years. I've only been full time on it for about 4 or 5 months now. Although I was close to it for the last 2 or 3 years. So the trouble is, when you're trying to build something, you won't necessarily make money with it initially, and you do need to make money to live. So I was doing lots of freelance work, and then that's always a distraction, taking you away from what I was doing initially. From
the focus, yeah,
it takes the focus, and it's also when you're making money and you think, if I do more, I get more money, and then that becomes distracting. Then I start thinking, shall I start an agency, and kind of getting distracted by other ideas that weren't really my primary focus. So that was obviously a challenge, and then about, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember exactly, it was just before COVID, I was like, okay, no, now's the time. I've been talking about this website for so long. I want this to be what I do. and then I kind of really committed to being consistent with what I was doing, and I started seeing the results. And that's like a real affirming thing when you see it's not just doing it. It's not the next day you see the result, but over the next months you see it building, and that's a really important thing. I think you can go for so long without success, but at some point you do need. It doesn't have to be a lot of success. It'd be making €1 here or getting a few thousand new visitors there or new subscribers or whatever. But you need that momentum basically,
and celebrate every little win as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a sprint, other times it's a marathon, right? Yeah. So, and what was that click in your mind? Like, what do you think prompted that? Was it like, just making that decision and like, right, I'm going to commit to this. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I'm going to say no to other things, so I can say a bigger yes to this. Was that the turning point for you?
Yeah. So basically, when I moved back here, I was like, okay, I want to do the website, and then I was getting to the stage where I was embarrassed to talk about it with friends and stuff, because I've been talking about this thing for like probably 6 years at that point, and it's still, it's nothing. It's
like a side hustle.
It's just a little side hustle. It doesn't really mean anything, doesn't do anything. And because I was feeling that embarrassment, I was like, okay, I need to like really commit one way or the other. So I was like, okay, do I sell this website just for not very much, just kind of get rid of it and give it to someone else to take over? Or do I go, okay, no, really, now you commit. You do some freelance work for just to keep you going, but you don't take too much on, and you spend every single day working on this to make it better. And I kind of talked about it a little bit, and I was like, okay, I don't think I could live with myself if I'd just given it up and sold it at that point, because I would have always been left with the kind of what if. So it's that kind of thing of really committing to it and then following that up with action. So as in, it doesn't have to be a lot, but like maybe a post every day or social media post every day. So it just stays in the front of your mind. It's not something before I was writing a few posts a year, and then I kind of forget about it for a couple of weeks, and then I come back and then I have a bit of energy for it, write a couple of posts, and then I leave it again. And that's just not how you get momentum to build something. It's that consistency of action. I think is so important.
That's the word, isn't it? Yeah. Like this, I mean, the story that I think, most of us relate to that story because it's so human, right? And it's just so difficult to get projects actually going and bring something to fruition. We all recognize the difficulties of that, and all the stuff that you mentioned. We know this, really. We know this intellectually. We understand it. And yet our intellectual understanding is not enough if we don't put it into practice. And yet there is all this resistance, which I think if we perceive, and I want to pick your brains on this, if you perceive the resistance itself as the fuel to actually push through and to think that the resistance is not against you, it's just kind of there to actually test your limits and to make you kind of push through even more kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of that push and pull kind of, what would you say to people that then sort of get discouraged along the way? Because it's enough that you don't do it once, you don't do it twice, and that starts piling up, and then you get completely demoralized, right? So beyond the believe in yourself, you can do it. Beyond that, what can you tell our audience by way of inspiration? As in, like, how not to quit? Because sometimes it's so invisible, all this stuff or whatever we have in mind, right? It's not even and no one is pointing a gun at us saying, "Oh, you've got to do it." So where do you go for strength when that's just not there?
I think it's just about turning up. Sometimes it's.
Exactly.
There's a phrase I know or a quote I know, and I can't remember it exactly, but it's something along the lines of, if it's only information that you need, everyone would be billionaires with six packs. But that's just not the case. Everyone deep down knows how to get fit. Like, it's not eating burgers and sit on the sofa. It's eating well, being active. Most people know if you start a business and you do the right things, you'll get pretty wealthy. But a lot of people are still in jobs they dislike, and they kind of get stuck in that routine. And I've been there as well. And so it's not just knowing how to do it, like, you've got to implement it. And then, so it's, again, I come back to this thing about consistency, but if it's just doing something every day towards it. So if you took exercise as an example, no one really ever wants to go to the gym. Like, you never go, "Oh, today I really want to go to the gym," unless you've been eating horrendously the next day, then maybe you're extra motivated. if you just say, okay, I don't have to go to the gym, but I have to walk to the gym, and then if I don't want to go in, I can walk back.
Right.
That's an action you've taken. At least that's a positive action, and I think and to be fair, when you walk to the gym, you're going to go in. So don't think about, I've got to do this big thing. Just start doing something towards it, and then the momentum will take you there.
I mean, because one of the keys for me is I think it's all too easy to actually just beat yourself up when you don't do stuff, right? And I think that's actually a trap.
Yeah.
Because it's that voice is not a friendly voice. It sounds like a friendly voice, but it's not. Like, so, there are times when we must kind of embrace where we are. And then perhaps there are times when we've got the energy where we can refuse where we are and actually just kind of move forward and leap into or lean into action, as they say, right? Mm-hmm. But it's both and, right? So there are times where, when our nervous system is just completely out of sorts and we've got to regulate it and we've got to slow down and appreciate that and just simply give ourselves credit for our intentions and just kind of...
Absolutely. I think it's about being conscious about your decisions as well. So if you shouldn't, I say, you should do something every day. Maybe I don't mean it, you should work non-stop. I mean, if you want to work, do something towards it. But if you feel burnt out and tired, be conscious about it and say, I need a rest today. I'm going to have a really nice day. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to do something completely different. But be conscious about it. Don't be just on your phone, this kind of procrastination. I think procrastination is the biggest problem as a generation we'll have now, just because of the phone. Like, right. It's always there. It's always an easy way out of any situation.
It's a drug.
And it is a drug. It's an amazing tool, but it's always there. It's always a distraction. But sometimes you need to be conscious about just putting that down and then doing what you really want to do. I think it's almost like, I feel like boredom's disappeared. Like that I remember being bored as a kid sometimes.
Oh God, yeah. And those long summers sometimes.
You just kind of sat home, I want to do something, but I don't know what. But you couldn't lose the whole day necessarily, because at some point you'd have to get up and kind of do something. Maybe it was a video game then, so maybe that's not the perfect generational example. But now, the second you're bored, you just pick up your phone, you can lose 2 hours just flicking through social media or something.
Exactly.
And I think I think being conscious in what you're doing, so whether that's working or resting, or having fun, or meeting friends, just make the decision to actually do that.
Would you say that starting a business is a tool for personal development as well?
Well, especially a small business, especially if you've got no money to put into it to begin with, because
got to get creative.
You've got to get creative. There's problems and you've got to solve them. You can't hand it off to someone else like you could in a big company, like passing around emails. You've just got to figure it out. So you learn so much so quickly doing these things, because if my first time my website went down, I was terrified and I was like, what do I do? And then I haven't got an IT department to call up. I've got to figure out what on earth has gone on. But that's a really useful learning experience, because you learn how to do it, and then it calms you down. It gives you a bit of confidence as well, because you think, okay, this whole thing I'm in charge of, and I can keep it going and I can keep it growing. I didn't mean to rhyme then, but
that was good. You're such a poet. One of the things that you mentioned that also kind of caught my attention is that sort of the moment you allowed yourself to, let's say, sacrifice the freelancing, the security of the freelancing job, and actually just completely kind of devote your time and attention to the business, that puts a kind of pressure, but good of the good kind. It seems to me that you think, right, I don't have that to fall back on anymore. Therefore, I've got to get down to business. Therefore, I need to be absolutely sharp and focused. That increased sense of responsibility, if it comes at the right time, do you think that contributed to your even better organization, better practices, better focus, better kind of just being there with it?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't quit all my freelance one day and then just start doing this, because I would just I've been sleeping on the street basically. So what I started doing is saying, I'm not going to take on any more opportunities unless I absolutely love it. So it was kind of about whittling down my focus. So, and then every time the website was growing and I could afford to lose a client, I'd kind of get rid of one that I didn't like, the one I least liked. So it was kind of working my way up. And then that kept going until I got to the stage a few months ago. I was like, there's no point in me freelancing. And it was a bit of a scary thing to get rid of that final client, because it didn't actually make much financial sense, but because it was on a retainer, I was just getting a little bit, like, some money every month that you can live off. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to lose that. What if the website crashes tomorrow? Then what would I do? And then it was weird that I consciously knew that wasn't a real threat. And I knew I could deal with anything that came. So, but there was still that little bit of fear. And I'm thinking, oh God, what if? And that kind of fear factor comes in a bit. And I was like, okay, no, calm down. It doesn't make sense to do this. You're probably losing money by doing this work. Just get rid of it. And it was the best thing I ever did, like, in terms of just having that little moment of calmness to go, okay, no, it's okay.
Right, so you did it not only at the right time, but also in the right spirit, right, with the right intention. So it was not a moment of, like, getting carried away with excitement. It was actually just a very thought through decision and thinking, you know what, if everything goes pear-shaped, I can still... Well, I can reinvent myself. I'll
figure it out.
Work in a restaurant. I can whatever, right? Just
Exactly. You've got to have a trust in yourself, I think. And if the website goes tomorrow, I don't think I'll never be able to earn money or do anything ever again. I think when your back's against the wall, you will figure something out as well. But I think, you should trust yourself a bit.
Now, before we finish, because this was going to be a relatively quick chat. There'll be more, I hope, if we can get him on. But I want to ask you, what advice, right, would you give to aspiring creators that want to sort of build an online business, whether that online business is to support their existing business that they have in the real world, let's say, or they just simply want to kind of grow online, have a website, have a YouTube channel, whatever that is, or just, drop shipping. What would you what would be the do's and don'ts that you would, that come up to you that you can,
So what I would say is, don't just quit your job and say, now I'm going to do this. I think that's, if you want to really do that, you'll do it next to your job anyway. So just start it. If you've already got a job, start doing a bit and just taking action every day. It's that being consistent. So just keep going. It's not, if you want to work online, I think some people think it's like a get rich quick scheme. Right. It's not. It's a job. You're in charge of it, luckily, and you can have complete control of it. But it's not. Yeah. You're not like, oh, now I'm driving a Lamborghini. It's not that. It's a chance to build something. So that means you've got to lay the foundations. You've got to take action every day. And one thing that really helped me is kind of finding, not necessarily mentors in terms of people going up to people and say, oh, will you be my mentor? But like, I always tried to find other websites or other projects that I really liked. And then I tried to figure out how they did it and like model, and then where their success came from. I tried to model it onto my own. So like, I tried to figure out what worked for them and then how can I apply that to my own business? So it's not about inventing something necessarily brand new, but it's adapting ideas. I mean, that's all inventions come about. No, the iPad didn't come from nowhere. It was adapted from a phone basically. And then the phone came from previous generations, and at every stage it gets a little bit better. And that's basically what you want to apply for your own business. You don't need something completely new or a brand new idea necessarily. You just need a bit of a novel spin on something that's already working.
Exactly. So no need to reinvent the wheel.
You don't need to reinvent
just putting your own spin on something that you know works already, and already, to be fair, already resonates with people. People already kind of recognize, right? Yeah. And you go to some of the themes that people relate to, and they go, oh yeah, okay. But then you put your own spin. But that is an art. It's an art to do that, isn't it? Like, well,
I could argue it's a science as well. It's in terms of rather than an art, in terms of. It's good to test ideas as well. Like, so you might have this hypothesis about something. Say you've got a product idea you want. You don't want to go and get £1 million of investment, build a massive team, and then start seeing if people actually want it. That's just like the wrong way to go about it. You want to find the kind of minimum viable product and see if that interests someone. And I think what you see with a lot of online businesses, especially, is that they never started out doing what they now do, or the successful ones. They often like kind of pivot and change direction because that's what the need was. So it's good to do this testing as early as possible to see what people actually think and want. Because if people don't want it, then it's good to quit as soon as possible, really. Not because it's hard, but because it's just not the right thing. So you want to, then it's not even quitting, it's about changing direction. So get into that point and then go, okay, this is where I need to go.
And actually that approach, sort of pushes you to connect with your audience right away and be...
Oh, then you're engaging, exactly.
And engage and act on what people want.
Exactly.
That you think you can deliver or even over-deliver, hopefully, right? Now, what about managing growth effectively? I think that's also those are big words, but I mean, I see that a lot of people struggle with that. It comes to a point when they like, right, I could grow this way, or I could sell it out, or I could just hire people and delegate as much as possible. Other people, I was talking to somebody the other day who was telling me, actually, you should delegate from, maybe not from the very beginning, but as soon as you can, delegate everything that is not like core to what you do, kind of thing. So,
I mean, it's super true as well. Like, I think one thing that I've been really susceptible to is that if you're doing all the work, it's not a business. Like, because if you get step away from it, it's just dead in the water. Like, you need to create these systems, and ideally, you should be able to have like a kind of a playbook that anyone can read and then be able to do, and then you're creating this bigger system. But that's one of the challenges. Like, in terms of growth, it's something I'm thinking about a lot at the moment. In terms of what my goal with this project really was to create a lifestyle business. So I felt like it was had a positive impact on the world, but it also gave me the opportunity to work how I want, where I want, and these things. And now I'm at the stage where I've kind of achieved that goal. I can live comfortably with this project, and I can work how I want. And I've got a team of like freelancers helping me. My question now is probably, what should be the next stage? Should I just keep growing this at this rate, or should I be more ambitious and really at this point now pour like gas on the fire, to speak? So this is something I'm mulling over quite a lot. I don't want to lose my core goal. So I believe in like working freely and working how and where I want. And I want that for other people who work with me as well. So that's obviously going to stay a part of it. But then, it's a question of, I don't want to sit back and lose an opportunity. I want to make the most of it. So I'm kind of weighing up that at the moment.
Fantastic. Maybe, who knows, that's a question that our thinkers and doers, our listeners, might be happy to chip in and offer some suggestions. Who knows, right? Would you say that, if you kind of park for a little bit the focus on growth itself and think, okay, how can I serve this community even more? How can I over-deliver? What would serve them best? And then that would perhaps provide the answer to that question. Is that possible? Or you still have to make choices based on...
No, that's definitely part of it. Is figuring out what people want. It's just a question of how quickly for me, it's how quickly I want to get there.
Right.
So I've got a list of 100 things that I would love to do on the site, and every day I'm seeing errors or there's something I could do better. But at the moment, I can't implement 1% of what I want to change. So that's partly what takes me back to this question of, should I be a bit more aggressive with it? Because I do want to serve the audience, and possibly the audience could be, or probably even the audience could best be served by me being more aggressive with it. But equally, I don't want to lose sight of what we've already achieved and what it already is, which I think is a big risk for any company that's growing. They kind of lose that initial core philosophy and principle. So
exactly.
That's the challenge, really.
Finding that balance, that you want to take risks, but you don't want to lose sight of what this is about as well, right?
Exactly,
what the essence is. That's a very good point. And my last question, or one of my last questions, what are you thinking about these days, and what are you doing about it? Well, you've just told us you're thinking about that, but is there anything else that you want to share with us, and what are you doing about that?
Well, that's a good question. So, I mean, that has been a really big part of what I'm thinking about. I'm kind of mulling it over. I think I just need to speak to more people about this, and especially other people who've had businesses. So that's one big part. Time is like always a huge thing for me. Like, I want to, as I was saying before, I want to spend my time consciously, and that's an ongoing kind of battle, like trying to find the right time between family, friends, work, I kind of always wish there was more time, but that's not the right answer. The right answer is like how I'm spending my time. It's not more money is not normally the right answer. It's normally budgeting.
So managing your time and managing your energy as well, right? With the time that
Exactly,
you have. Okay, it's a very good sort of, I think, point for us to conclude. And where can people find you if they want to know more about you or your business?
I don't really have any personal brand or anything. If you want to visit my cycling website, you can go to discerningcyclist.com.
All right.
That's probably the best place. I don't really do social or anything.
And you have a newsletter, which is actually a very fun newsletter, right?
For the Discerning Cyclist.
On the website. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you want to join the email list, feel free.
Yeah, it's a good laugh, good product, right? So, okay. So, and this is the very last one, what advice would you give to cyclists nowadays to discern, what makes a discerning cyclist?
I think just enjoy it, don't take it too seriously. And just, I wouldn't say necessarily advice for cyclists, but I think if you're driving when short distances, maybe just think about walking or cycling and maybe just doing those short journeys in a different way. Obviously, you're not going to cycle hundreds of miles every day to work, but if you've got a 10-15 minute drive, you could probably, it depends where you live as well, like with the infrastructure, but if you can, I think it's a really positive shift in your life to have that fresh air in the morning, and you kind of see places in a different way. You're much more conscious about what your local area, whereas when you're driving, you're kind of zoned in on the road with music blaring or whatever. But I think it's like a very positive decision that you can make for your life.
Love it. So true. And I'm going to take that advice myself. Pete, cheers. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah. Thinkers and doers, our listeners. A pleasure to be with you as always. See you next week. Take care. Bye.
Cheers.